Good morning and good afternoon, guys. Today is the 10th of December 2016. So I plan to get 2 videos done today, and this first one has 4 articles which I'm going to be knitting together in a certain format in order to reveal exactly how this agenda is unfolding and how it just appears to be this endless wave that cannot be broken. Now, upon briefly reading through these before selecting what it is that I'm going to be making a video on today, it just goes without saying, and this will be more than apparent to many of you guys out there, just how this whole thing is being orchestrated and how all these news topics are bombarding us on a daily basis, desensitizing us to this information, making us more blasé about it. Because we generally just hear the same repeating news coming out, both from the mainstream and from the alternative media. And it does get a little bit tiresome repeating the same information. But I guess in combating the mainstream media with their constant bombardment of propaganda, you have to fight fire with fire. And every day, more and more people turn to channels like this one, seeking some alternative information, because we all know that we are living in a distorted matrix which is not reality. And yet so many of us are still unaware to what is actually occurring. So you'll see how these articles link together, and I'll go straight in with it now. Carrying on from the previous videos, this one from Zero Hedge, 9th of December 2016 by Tyler Durden and submitted by Sean Bradley via the antimedia.org. Cash is no longer king. The phasing out of physical money has begun, and we're more than aware of this step towards cashless societies occurring globally. As physical currency around the world is increasingly phased out, the era where, quote, cash is king, end quote, seems to be coming to an end. Countries like India and South Korea have chosen to limit access to physical money by law, and others are beginning to test digital blockchains for their central banks. And with everything, guys, there's always a guinea pig or a testing zone with anything. They don't rule this out globally, but they see how the markets and the populace react to changes. And bear in mind, with everything that I read, the way the agenda works is they are implementing changes, much like death by 1,000 cuts. And what I mean is, they don't kill you instantly, or they don't change things so dramatically that you notice. But instead, they put lots of tiny cuts, which ultimately add up to your death. It's the same with legislations. And it's the same with capital controls. They take lots of minute steps for the majority of people to not even realise and accept these changes as they're implemented. So this is nothing more than a trial period ever since the beginning of this entire agenda. Some suspect was back during the 1900s, and it's a slow generational agenda by those that control the entire systems. Carrying on, the war on cash isn't going to be waged overnight, and showdowns will continue in any country where citizens turn to alternatives like precious metals or decentralized cryptocurrencies. Although this transition may feel like a natural progression into the digital age, the real motivation to go cashless is downright sinister. The unprecedented collusion between governments and central banks that occurred in 2008 led to bailouts, 0% interest rates, quantitative easing on a scale never seen before in history. Those decisions, which were made under duress and in closed-door meetings, set the stage for this inevitable demise of paper money. And as we're all aware, guys, the whole purpose of this demonetization, this removal of cash, is to pressure and push everything into a central form where everything is monitored, controlled, and can be switched off the same way you turn off your light. No longer will you be able to have any anonymous transactions. Much like, especially in the UK, you can no longer walk down the street without being captured on CCTV over 100 times. And I'll also just link in, I don't have the article, but I read it early this morning. I believe it was MasterCard who are trying to introduce payment via facial recognition and also fingerprint scanning, which means not only will all your data be held inside of a central banking system, but also your biometrics, your physical appearances, and your retina of the eyes will be stored by these banking sectors. Now, is that something that sounds safe, considering that that sort of information is the most sought after by data collection agencies globally? And this stuff is going to be implemented. It's already in development. So again, carrying on. Sacrificing the stability of national currencies has been used as a way to prop up failing private institutions around the globe. By kicking the can down the road yet another time, bureaucrats and bankers sealed the fate of the financial system as we know it. If you want a glimpse of how this story ends, all you have to do is look at Venezuela, where the government has destroyed the value of the bolivar, and the US intervention has further accelerated the problem. Desperation has overcome the country, leading women to go as far as selling their own hair just to get by, while crime and murder rates have spiked to all-time highs. The most dangerous threat to the Venezuelans has been extensive government planning. The money they work for and save is now so valueless, it's weighed instead of counted. The stacks of bills have been carried around in backpacks, and the scene is reminiscent of a hyperinflation Weimar Germany experienced in the 1920s. Few Western nations have ever experienced a currency crisis before, meaning many are blind to the inevitable consequences that come from the unending stimulus we have seen since 2008. And guys, that's also something that is planned ahead of time, is when they create severe collapses through nations, the hardest hit time frame is generally a generation apart, meaning the stories will be told from parents or grandparents to their offspring. But because the offspring has grown up without ever experiencing such events, they become blasé to the real impacting threats that wait just around the corner. So the extreme pain and poverty that was felt by many is washed away with their deaths and never experienced by the next of kin. And that is basically designed for people not to hoard what actually is real physical money, i.e. gold and silver. Not to mention the decades of indoctrination that takes place, especially during the 1950s to now. That's the cycle of the baby boomers, totally blasé to previous events that their parents went through. Thus, the lessons from that era were never passed on to the millennials. So you can see the impacting effect that is going to cripple millions and millions of people in the West. Carrying on, in order to keep this kind of chaos from spreading like a contagion to the rest of the world, representatives are willing to do anything necessary. But this comes at a cost. Instead of having to worry about carrying around wheelbarrows full of money, the fear in a cashless society will likely stem from bank customers' restricted accounts to funds, with no physical way for consumers to take possession of their wealth. The banking interests will decide how much is available. And as we know, anything held inside of a bank is not yours, it's the bank's. You are a creditor of that bank. The level of trust most people still have in the current system is astonishing. Even after decades of incompetence, manipulation and irresponsibility, the public still grasps at government and the establishment order like a child learning how to swim. The responsibility that comes with the Independence has intimidated the entire population into leaving their decisions up to the so-called, quote, experts. It just so happens that those trusted policymakers have an agenda to strip you of your future generations of prosperity, and I'll add, send you into poverty. Some of those few hopes in this war against centralization are peer-to-peer technologies like Bitcoin and Ethereum. Those innovative platforms have the potential to open up markets that circumvent state-controlled Ponzi schemes. The future development of crypto assets has massive potential, but being co-opted is a real danger. The greatest threat to the individual freedom is financial dependence, and as long as your wealth is under someone else's control, it can never be completely secure. And guys, referring to the financial dependence, how many of our populations, mainly in the West, are totally dependent on the state, totally dependent on their housing being paid, their food being paid, their energy being paid, and money being put into their bank accounts for them to spend on whatever they like? How many of these asylum seekers are supported by the state? This is all a huge drain, obviously, on the financial sector inside of governments. But it's something they have to do in order to prevent huge conflict occurring inside of the nations. Because if people have nothing, not even a drip feed, which is effectively what they're under, they're being drip fed just enough water and food to keep them alive. And then they sit in front of a TV box being programmed by the mainstream media and whatever reality TV show it is that they watch. Sad but true. But in a flip scenario where the daisy chain collapses, and when I say the daisy chain, I'm always referring to the derivative market, because when this system implodes, and it's a financial certainty that the day will come, then their life support systems are switched off. And what happens to a society which, as far as I'm aware, the American unemployment figures are something like 100 million people, which, as I understand, obviously not taking into account refugees and asylums and all those people, but something like 1/3 of the population. You have places like Spain, where 25% of the youth are unemployed. And unemployment is just rising globally. Debt is rising globally. And all these people fall back into that system. The more people that become unemployed, companies that become unprofitable and have to lay people off. And supposedly we're in a recovery period, which we know we're anything but. It's just an extension of 2008 on a slow 1,000-cut death spiral. So carrying back on with the article, unfortunately, private blockchains are becoming increasingly popular, creating Trojan horses for those just learning about the technology. In contrast, Bitcoin's transaction ledger is public. Without the decentralized aspect of a financial network, it is just a giant tracking database that can be easily compromised like any other. The World Economic Forum released a report on the future of financial infrastructure. Giancarlo Bruno, head of the financial services industry at WEF, stated, quote, "Rather than stay at the margins of a financial industry, blockchain will become the beating heart of it. It will help build innovative solutions across the industry, becoming ever more integrated into the structure of financial services, as mainframes, messaging services, and electronic trading did before it." End quote. The list of countries who are exploring integrating blockchain technology into their central banking system is extensive. Just to name a few, Singapore, Ukraine, France, Finland, and others are in the process of researching and testing out options. For those who appreciate more tangible wealth, diversifying into hard assets like gold and silver is a great first step. It's not about becoming a millionaire or getting rich quickly, but rather using precious metals as vehicles for investment in the long term. And that's something people need to understand when you're investing in the metals, because it is not a quick get-rich scheme. It's a protection mechanism. It's what you use in this 1,000-cut death to preserve your wealth. Because if you're holding it in any other fiat form, you're just going to be on a upward treadmill, never being able to keep up with inflation and other costs, unless you stick it into the stock market, which is nothing more than a roulette, especially in this time when all of the hedge funds are pulling their money. So that option really looks like a fool's option. Regardless of whatever event unfolds over the decades to come, the wealth preserved in physical form is more secure than any other asset. 40 years ago, it was possible to save your money in a bank and accumulate interest over time, but that opportunity no longer exists. Those who fail to adapt to this new financial twilight zone will likely find themselves living as slaves to debt for years. Control and confidence are two of the most important things in the system we live in. Once these digital spider webs have been put into place, the ability for an individual to maintain privacy or anonymity will all but disappear. Only through understanding the subversive actions being taken can people protect themselves from having to put their future in someone else's hands. And that's the brutal truth, guys, because you cannot trust anyone but yourself, especially when it comes to your wealth preservation. The cash that allows free transactions without tax burdens or state scrutiny won't be around much longer. There will be many rationalizations for a cashless society in the years to come, but without fixing this broken financial system, this will only ensure that despotism gains an ever sturdier foothold. Now I'm going to flip over to this article here, which I actually covered another story on back in April. And I just went back to my previous video and I was shocked at how bad the video was. But the information itself was good, but the way I presented it and read was awful. So I'm going to redo this one because it's relevant in my thought process. So a recap of this article from RT, published on the 26th of April 2016. Google, Ford, Uber joined forces to create coalition for self-driving cars. Companies from Detroit and Silicon Valley are teaming up to urge lawmakers to put self-drive cars on the street as fast as they can. Companies believe the technology can save more than 33,000 who die in car accidents, although thousands of jobs may be lost. And something that I didn't realise in the first video that I did of this one was the number 33. So straight away, alarm bells ring that this is code to the Freemasonic orders. This is us, we are coming, and this is going to happen. Titled, The Self-Driving Coalition for Safer Streets, the new lobbying group is composed of Google, Ford, Uber, Volvo, and Lyft. The group's entire goal is to advocate for self-driving technology at the federal level. And guys, we're going to pause here for just 1 second because there's this other article from Visual Capitalist, which is published on the 29th of November by Jeff Desjardins. And this is 14 companies control the entire auto industry. So here's the 14 companies. And following on also from one of my previous videos stating Tata Steel, which is a steelworks company in Wales, which is in limbo between shutting down one of only 2 steel plants inside of the UK. So that's a major Indian firm. But what's relevant is Ford, because obviously if you're one of 14 companies that control the majority of created vehicles, you hold a huge slice of the market. Now obviously we know Ford is a huge slice of the market, and that ties in with obviously Google and being an American-based company. So that ties in with this article with the effective ability that Ford and the amount of industry that they have at their capacity, Google, the amount of finance and technology that they have at their disposal, and obviously Uber, which is the new form of grabbing a taxi. Okay, so we can see exactly where this article is going, along with its affiliated partnerships. So why I'm bringing this to your attention again is because with the loss of jobs going on globally, and this introduction of what is effectively, quite likely, a driverless car and highly likely taxi service. So if you imagine the production cost of cars, if you own the manufacturing process, the technology process, and the marketing process, you can literally put thousands of cars on the road and totally absorb the taxi and also commercial driving sectors, eliminating the overhead cost of labour markets. Because if you get authorization to allow these cars on the road, you will wipe out hundreds of thousands of jobs globally. And obviously no man can compete against machine for overhead costs. So it goes without saying, this is a very serious situation that is occurring with this driverless car. Now it links over to my next article, again by Zero Hedge, which is titled Outsourcing Giant Capita Replacing Thousands of Jobs with Robots. And you can see how that links to the previous article with robotic cars, and how that will affect the taxi industry and also the commercial long-haul lorry freight services and all sorts of services that require transport of goods. So this is the 9th of December by Tyler Durden. Earlier this week we warned that as a trend to robotization accelerates, millions of mostly low-skilled American jobs will be lost in the next 5 years, replaced by robots as companies seek to maintain high profit margins in a time of rising wages and growing inflation. One company, however, cannot wait that long. British outsourcing giant Capita, a company whose contracts include collecting the BBC licence fee, is preparing to fire thousands and replace them with robots after clients cut spending following Brexit vote in a move some fear will be repeated across the country, leading to more than 1 million job losses, according to The Guardian. So guys, where do these 1 million people then find work? They can't. So they go into the system, which in the UK means going to the local job centre, where I believe you get something like £65 a week, plus your living expenses. So that just adds to the welfare state, which adds to the ever-increasing debt levels. So how is this even a positive thing for society, this introduction based upon pure profits? Capita, an FTSE 100 listed firm that also runs the London congestion charge, said it needed to axe 2,000 jobs as part of a cost-cutting drive in response to poor trading. The company said it would use the money it saved to fund investment into robotic workers. The announcement has led to more concerns that the world is facing a fourth industrial revolution powered by artificial intelligence, AI, which will result in unprecedented job losses. According to RT, a study published by Oxford University and consultancy firm Deloitte in October predicted there is a 77% probability Britain will lose 1.3 million, quote, repetitive and predictable, end quote, administrative and operative jobs within 15 years. More than 850,000 public sector jobs, including teachers, social workers, and even police officers. God, can you imagine robotic police officers on the street? Could also be replaced by computer programs. Keys warned in October the government is unprepared for the coming technological revolution. The same can be said about the US. So guys, I'll leave it there. Don't really need to go any more into that one. But this is really something that has to be stopped. A lot of this technology is obviously coming out of Japan, who are fanatical about creating robotics and AI. And if you think it's far-fetched to be having Terminator trolling the streets, well, that's only going to be a matter of time. And I want to link over to this last article, which is one way of controlling the situation. Again, with the agenda of population control. This is November the 25th by Visual Capitalist. Fertility rates keep dropping, and it's going to hit the economy hard, or so they think. Total fertility rates, which can be defined as the average number of children born to women who survives her reproductive years, aged 15 to 49, have decreased globally by about half since 1960, again the baby boom era. This has drastically shaped today's global economy, but a continued decline could have much more severe long-term consequences. If the world has too many elderly dependents and not enough workers, the burden on economic growth will be difficult to overcome. So obviously they have a fertility rate on this chart from 1960 to 2015, and the brown line is representing the Middle East and North Africa, the pink one South Asia, the grey-blue one Latin America and the Caribbean, the green one North America, the red one East Asia and the Pacific, and the blue one Europe and Central Asia. The dotted one in the centre is the average for the world, which obviously up here started at 5 and is now just about 2.5. But Europe has gone from 2.9 down to about 1.8, and the same for Asia and North America. So the Western world and the Asian aspect are not producing enough children to replace the population, which obviously leads to a depopulation over time. Fertility rates start to decline. First, it's important to address some of the reasons to these falling fertility rates. In developed nations, the introduction of commercially available birth control has played a large role, but this also coincides with several major social shifts, changing religious values, the emancipation of women and their increasing participation in the workforce, the higher costs of childcare and education have all factored into the decline in fertility rates. And guys, obviously we know back in the 1960s, one man used to go out, work, and earn the same amount in terms of paying for food, bills, and looking after their children, as generally both parents earn in today's era. And this was all basically designed to tax more of the population, because one man was only ever taxed back in this period, whereas now both parents are taxed. And also women in the workforce are now wanting to climb the corporate ladder, so they're refraining from childbirth because they are penalised in the corporate world for having children. They will lose promotions due to maternity leaves, as they will be seen as not loyal to the corporation. So this has a knock-on effect, because women believe that, well, I will gain my career, I will become successful, and then I will have my children. But what's occurring is a lot of women are getting to the later side of fertility and finding out that they actually have difficulties giving birth, because not only are we in an ever increasing polluted planet with everything that we consume and eat riddled with nasty additions that decrease fertility, the air that we breathe is constantly being bombarded with chemtrails sprayed through the air, aerosols sprayed through the air, products that we place on our bodies absorbed into the bodies, reducing infertility. The very water that people drink reduces fertility. So there's a clear agenda of depopulation, and you can kind of see very simply the process of these few linked articles, with a process occurring of transitioning us through from the 1960 period all the way through into this transgender AI robotic future that lays ahead of us, with this huge shift from poor, middle and upper class societies into seemingly extremely wealthy and poverty divisions. And that will be the only two-class tier system. All the while, the birth rate is constantly being controlled and suppressed. And a lot of this takes place through social shaping, by creating the image of becoming successful, wealthy, better than the average person, living that comfortable life. Not to mention the whole push on this blending of culture that you see in the media, where there's constant merging of races and the dilution of origin. How often will you see that commercial with multicultural actors covering a broader spectrum? The black man with a white woman, or the two children, one Asian, one white. There's a whole agenda occurring where you are being desensitized to what is trying to be created through the blending of identity. And the way that I see things unfolding, and this is not a racist channel, it is just seeing what is occurring and speaking my mind. I believe the elites of the Western world are trying to set up an establishment where they will be protected by a ring of robotic enforcement officers. And being of Nazi origin, a lot of these so-called elitists, we know that they have a racial motive agenda. We know that they flood huge amounts of Muslim nations into the European. And something about religion is created to cause conflict. And with decades and centuries of brainwashing occurring globally to all forms of people, they are deluded into believing that their religion is the correct religion. And religion has always led to conflict. And what better way to create conflict and mayhem inside of the European nations and Western nations than blending the populations with two religions that mix as well as water and oil. This is a design to create conflict, depopulation. Along with the fall in fertility, there's going to come a huge conflict between nations and the divisions of the people that are living inside of the towns and cities. This is how the people in control dwindle down their numbers to prevent an uprising, while the total control and transition is initiated. But the people are too busy fighting their own closed mindset belief that they actually miss the bigger picture of what is occurring. People are too concerned about their own private situation and care little of nobody else's. Again, this is a desensitization agenda that has been going on for years. We see lots of conflicts occurring outside of our nations. We see lots of poverty, hunger, death, and governments carrying out absurd policies which are no way in the interests of the general public. So the question really is, what can you do? And that's what it really comes down to. What can you do to try and help others from what is coming? You can share videos that are relevant. You can take actions to stockpile foods, precious metals, and diversify into decentralized currencies. Because in the world that will be coming, in this fourth revolution of AI robotics, you can guarantee that there will be a decentralized version of currency. But you can also guarantee real physical hard assets that stand the test of time will be the most desirable commodities on the planet. And that is the divide that you need in order to protect yourself for when this system finally decides it's time. And everybody's saying, people have been saying this since 2008, people have been saying this since 2011, people have been saying the collapse is going to be happening in 2015, and on it goes. Well, just be thankful that it hasn't occurred yet, because when this does occur, the likelihood of this system reverting back to the luxuries of what we have today will be quite likely never returning in most of our lifetimes, unless you're lucky enough to be in an extremely fortunate position of wealth holdings where you can afford the astronomical prices in order to remain safe, fed, watered, and be able to provide for your families. Because the likelihood is billions of people will not. And I hate to put the doom and gloom into the realities of life, but guys, that's exactly what it is. It's a reality check to get your shit in order, because the last thing you want to be is not prepared for what is coming. So once you've got your personal situation in order, the best thing you can do is try to share the information with your local friends and families, creating a network, and then trying to link up with other people to share the information, because it's all about raising awareness, and it's your duty, because you are living in this time zone, you are living in this era. You can sit back and do nothing, but ultimately you will be part responsible for what occurs if you do nothing. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you on the next